She flipped him off, parked directly in front of the loading bay doors, and walked away. So he got the pallet jack, slid the forks underneath her car, lifted it completely off the ground, and moved it across the parking lot. Her tires weren't touching anything. This story takes place on a small island where a grocery store receiver had exactly one job: get the truck unloaded and back on the ferry before it left. A woman in a red convertible decided the job wasn't her problem. She was wrong about that. And by the third time she pushed her luck, she learned something specific about what happens when someone who knows exactly what they're doing finally runs out of patience. The ending is quiet and permanent. The setting is a small island community, the kind of place that is genuinely peaceful for about 7 months of the year, and then fills up with wealthy seasonal visitors who treat the locals as furniture. The grocery store sits at the center of town, and its loading bay faces the main parking lot. Ferries run on a fixed schedule. The supply truck arrives once a day, and it needs to catch the same ferry it came in on, or the whole island goes short on stock. Tavita Holbrook was 17 years old when he took the position of night receiver at the store. The title was slightly misleading. His shift ran 9 in the morning until 6 in the evening, because the most important truck of the day arrived mid-afternoon. His responsibility was to coordinate the full unload, receive the delivery, log everything, load the returns, the cardboard, the extra pallets, and get the truck back out in time to make the ferry. If that window closed, the truck missed the crossing. That was not a small thing. Tavita was good at this job. He was organized. He moved quickly. And he understood that the loading bay was a functional workspace, not a parking overflow. The store owner, Neka Albright, had given him clear authority over the dock. She was fair, she was present, and she trusted her staff. The cashiers knew the protocols. The other floor workers knew them too. In summer, the parking lot filled early, and some visitors, accustomed to deference, would occasionally slide a car into the loading bay and disappear into the store. Tavita had learned to place 3 bright orange cones, each one a full meter tall, around the bay entrance 30 minutes before the truck was due. The cones were visible. They were not ambiguous. They served their purpose almost every day. Almost. The first incident happened on a Thursday afternoon in late July. A woman arrived in a red convertible, top down, sun visor up, pulled into the loading bay, physically moved one of the cones to the side with her bumper, and parked facing the bay doors. Tavita saw it happen from the dock and walked out immediately. He introduced himself, explained the situation calmly. The truck was incoming. The bay needed to be clear within the next 20 minutes. Ferry schedule. No flexibility. The woman, whose name Tavita would later learn was Portia Renfield, did not engage with any of this. She told him she was a friend of the owner, that she had permission to park there, and that she was going inside. Then she walked past him. Tavita had worked for Neka Albright long enough to know she had not given anyone permission to park in the active loading bay, but he handled it procedurally. He made 2 store-wide announcements, asking the owner of the red convertible to move their vehicle. He informed every cashier at the registers. The owner of that vehicle was not to be processed through checkout until the car had been moved. No exceptions. Portia Renfield came out of the store 18 minutes later. She was not calm. She moved her car, but she made sure Tavita understood she considered this an injustice. She left without further incident, but the energy was clear. She believed she had been wronged. The following morning, Neka came in and asked Tavita directly what had happened. He told her everything, step by step. Neka confirmed that Portia was, in fact, a neighbor. She also confirmed she had given no parking permission. Neka was measured about it. She asked Tavita not to call a tow truck if it happened again, as a courtesy to the relationship. But then she added something specific. It was a convertible with the top down. If the car was ever blocking the bay again, there was nothing stopping them from releasing the handbrake and rolling it clear. The dock had to function. Tavita filed that away. 1 week later, Portia Renfield pulled back into the loading bay, parked between the cones, and this time turned to face the bay doors directly before getting out of her car. She looked at Tavita, then she raised her hand and flipped him off. Not a misunderstanding, not a moment of frustration. A deliberate, held gesture, eye contact maintained, before she turned and walked into the store. She had done this on purpose. She wanted him to know she had done it on purpose. Tavita went inside, got 2 colleagues, Florin Asante from the floor team and a produce clerk named Wanjiku Osei, explained what Neka had authorized, and walked back out to the parking lot. The 3 of them released the handbrake on the red convertible and rolled it manually across the asphalt. It barely cleared enough space for the truck to get in. Portia Renfield's car sat at an awkward angle on the far end of the lot, completely boxed in by the delivery vehicle for the next 30 minutes. She came into the loading bay while unloading was underway. The dock ran at a severe angle, standard design for drainage, but it meant loaded pallet jacks moved fast, and the sight lines were poor. Tavita was moving a pallet of milk down the ramp at full speed when Portia stepped into the path. To prevent the pallet from hitting her, he jammed his foot under the front wheels of the pallet jack. The jack jumped the obstruction and came down on his foot. He was wearing steel-toed boots. The boot held. The foot did not break. But the bruising was severe enough that he went to the hospital that evening and filed a workers' compensation report before he left the building. Let's sit with that for a moment. A woman entered a restricted work area, posted clearly, legally designated, functionally critical. while heavy equipment was in motion. A 17-year-old used his own body to stop several hundred pounds of dairy from hitting her. She went home. He went to the emergency room. She then filed a complaint against him. There's a particular kind of entitlement that doesn't register consequences as connected to choices. It just experiences inconvenience as persecution. This was that kind. Tavita came into the store 2 days later. His shift manager had approved the time off for the foot injury to pick up some paperwork he needed to finish a report he could complete from home. He was walking with noticeable difficulty. Neka Albright had just arrived and asked to speak with him immediately. She had received a formal complaint. A customer alleged that Tavita had screamed and sworn at her on the loading dock. The customer had not mentioned the pallet jack, had not mentioned entering the restricted area, had not mentioned the prior incidents with the cones, had not mentioned flipping him off. Tavita asked one question. Was this complaint from the woman with the red convertible? Neka said yes, and she noted that the confirmation seemed to suggest he knew what he'd done. Tavita told her he didn't want to say anything until she had watched the security footage from the dock cameras. There were several of them. He asked her to pull it up before they continued the conversation. Neka pulled it up. Right there, with Tavita present. She watched the original incident, Tavita walking out, speaking to Portia dismissing him and walking away. She watched the second incident, the cones, the deliberate parking, and the moment where Portia turned, made eye contact, and raised her hand. She watched Tavita go get his colleagues. She watched 3 people manually roll the car across the lot. Then she switched to the interior dock cameras. She watched Portia push through the staff-only doors. She watched the pallet jack coming down the ramp. She watched Tavita's leg drop. She couldn't see the foot from that angle, but by that point Tavita had taken off his boot and sock, and Neka looked at the bruising on his foot and didn't need the camera to explain the rest. She sat quietly for a moment. Then she told him, if that car ever appeared in or near the loading bay again, he was to call a tow truck immediately. Any time of day. No more courtesy holds. And she noted, without being asked, that he could have taken considerably more than 2 days on a workers' comp claim for an injury like that, and had chosen not to. The following Friday afternoon, Portia Renfield came back. She didn't park in the loading bay this time. She parked in front of the dumpster enclosure directly beside it, a position that blocked the wide-angle turn the delivery truck needed to make to enter the bay. There were no cones there. Technically, the space wasn't marked restricted. She got out of her car, caught Tavita's eye, and flipped him off again. Then she went into the store. Tavita didn't say anything to her. He didn't make an announcement. He didn't go get the cashiers. He called a tow truck. The dispatcher told him there was an accident across the island, and the truck was unavailable for at least an hour. The ferry window was not an hour away. Tavita evaluated the situation. The convertible top was up this time. Windows closed. The handbrake trick wasn't going to work. There was no way to steer it manually without access to the wheel. He thought for approximately 45 seconds. Then he got Florin Asante and Wanjiku Ose again. He wheeled out the pallet jack, a full-size electric model rated for 2.5 tons. He and his colleagues positioned 2 wooden shipping pallets flat on the asphalt beside the car. Tavita eased the forks of the pallet jack under the chassis, found the frame rails, and raised the vehicle. Slowly. Completely. All 4 tires left the ground. They moved the car across the parking lot in 2 stages. Then they stacked a 3rd pallet under the raised forks and lowered the car down onto the stack. When they were done, Portia Renfield's red convertible was sitting on top of 3 pallets, approximately 40 meters from where she had parked it, and not one of its tires was in contact with the ground. Tavita went back to the loading bay and received the truck. When Portia came out of the store, the screaming was audible from inside the building. A floor manager called Neka Albright directly. Neka drove to the store. She did not ask Tavita for an explanation first. She looked at the footage, looked at the car, looked at the parking lot, and then walked over to where Portia was standing and had a brief, quiet conversation with her. The tow truck arrived approximately 40 minutes later. Tavita told the driver where the vehicle was and mentioned the pallets. The driver paused, then said he'd seen a lot of things, but not that. He seemed more amused than troubled. Portia Renfield did not come into the loading bay this time. Whatever she felt, she kept it in the parking lot. Neka Albright formally banned Portia Renfield from the store that afternoon. Not a warning. Not a conditional restriction. A ban. Delivered in person, in the parking lot, in front of whoever happened to be walking by. The friendship, or whatever it had been, did not survive. Portia had apparently assumed that her connection to the store owner was a permanent shield, that it would absorb any amount of behavior without consequence. She had miscalculated the weight of that assumption against 3 incidents, a workers' comp filing, security footage, and a 17-year-old who had documented everything correctly from the very first afternoon. The following Monday, Neka came to Tavita before his shift and told him she was increasing his hourly rate by 10 cents. It was not a large number. It wasn't meant to be. It was an acknowledgement that he had handled a deteriorating situation with accuracy, that he had protected both the operation and a customer who had given him no reason to, and that he had never once escalated beyond what the situation required. He was 17. He was right every single time. There's a version of this story where the entitlement wins, where the complaint lands, where the footage never gets reviewed, where the worker absorbs the consequence and the customer walks away clean. That version happens often enough that people stop expecting anything different. This time, the footage existed. The injury was documented. The pattern was clear. And the person in authority watched the evidence before forming a conclusion. Sometimes the records are kept carefully enough that the truth doesn't need help. The universe keeps accurate records.